Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery preparing to check in on my two newest systems. They're the ones that are right here on these two stacked trays. They're 12 days of age and they've gotten one feeding which went in right before the worms got placed in here. So that inaugural kickoff day feeding 12 days later might be ready for some replenishment. And to tell you the truth, brand new bins, I haven't even looked in on them, so I'm not even sure what kind of shape they're in. Before that, though, before we proceed to feeding the active worm bins, there's also the matter of the castings that these little guys left behind. They left behind a whole bunch of castings that were expected to be chock full of straggler worms, so we've been running these bait stations. You can see I've got this going on in a couple locations. So we're going to get this system up onto the bench, see how after 12 days we're doing with trying to round up the stragglers. And it's at that time I usually like to blend in all that dry material around the edges, bringing the dryness of all the material down to the point where, hopefully lack of moisture means the worms want to get out, and then they end up in my little capture spot. So let's get into this system first, see how things are doing, and then we'll get over to feeding. So let's get started. I was just over in that other tray that we saw set up similarly to this, checking out the bait box and that other system. Not really interfering much with what was going on in the bait box, more about trying to till up the finished castings that make up the rest of the system out here to blend in all that dry. And here and there when I encountered a straggler worm, I would just go ahead and help them over to where I'd like to have them all hanging out, which is in this at this point. And while that other system, that one's been in this process of baiting the worms out for the past 23 days. Here, in the case of this one, this is 12 days, as I mentioned earlier. And I guess the best place to look for worms that are attracted to the moisture but have not yet made it into the bait box is over here. But, the whole idea of baiting them out is exactly so you don't have to go picking them out one by one individually, but just for fun, I just like to check them out, try to get a sense of concentration. Did I have to pick out many? Did I have very few to pick out? So it gives me a sense of how many worms are still inhabiting the system. But yeah, we're definitely not here to pick worms out individually. Let's just make sure any little guys that are dangling still down here. Let's get all these little guys to retreat back into the bait box, and then we could proceed. So I don't expect this baiting process to be complete yet, but at some point it will be done, and then we'll be adding all the worms that came together in the bait box back into one of the active trays. And I've been collecting the feedback I got from that last video when we released the worms into their new homes, and I've been tallying up the average population sizes. Still seems a little too early to reveal those numbers, so I didn't even come down here prepared with those tallies, but the numbers are coming together. Probably at the next check-in we'll probably be able to review how we estimated the population to live in those systems that we're going to be feeding, and then at some point we'll be adding those worms in the bait box into whichever of those two systems we believe is the one populated with the fewer number of worms. So just by doing what we did here, didn't take long, but it was mainly to get all that material that had been sitting out on the edges exposed to the air, get that stuff all blended in with the rest of the material in here. And I have a feeling that just by doing that, the the moisture level in the system just drops immensely, very fast, I think. So probably going to send a whole bunch of worms running for trying to find a spot that is a little bit more comfortable for them. I still can't seem to resist just grabbing ones that are right there on the surface and easy to be seen. just pick them up and move them over. So just want to do a little bit of backfilling here. It does feel like we've got a huge amount of castings material here. Perhaps I shouldn't have dug such a deep hole into which we're placing our bait station. That's all right. This won't be going for much longer, I don't think. I believe in the other system, after 23 days, I encountered very few worms out in the castings in general. Here, I would still have to say that there's probably a good many still hanging out, still needing a little bit more time to come together in the bait box. And I think besides the time they need, it doesn't hurt to give them this little bit of extra motivation too, by kind of driving the moisture level of their living quarters down to a point that might not be as comfortable anymore as it had been previously. So they'll probably get the point soon and move out. This process actually works pretty good for me. I do find that the worms eventually do find themselves not liking the dryness and go looking for a nice cool, damp place to be, and the bait box is usually the place to do that. So I once again resisted the urge to look within the bait box. I didn't look in the other one either. My assumption is that we've got a good many worms coming together there. So let's get to feeding. Let's get this thing out of the way and bring the bins out that we're going to be giving the yummy food to. This assortment of yummy stuff from my freezer includes tomato, potato peels, a little bit of orange peel as well. So to dress this up, I've also got a little bit of my worm chow. I have my grit too that we can apply as well. So let's get these systems uncovered, see how things are coming along. First check in on 2 brand new bins. So I guess I haven't really been, worm right there. I haven't been kind of like fawning over these new systems that are just kind of like, introduced to the wormery on their inaugural day, 12 days ago, and I've not checked in on them since. Looks like these feeding zone indicators have been popular. And all this dark material out on the top surface was stuff that came with the worms. Quite a bit of stuff, if I do say so. Whatever got caught in the screen. So that was kind of my main method for getting the worms separated from the material that they were occupying. And along with the worms came, I think, much more of this than I've ever bought over. And whether or not the fresh bedding we laid out for them right below it was to their liking, well, I think you could tell just by going down into the new bedding onto which the old stuff was placed, and it does seem like the worms are quite content to be down there in the damp bedding. So I just worried about getting things blended together if they were kind of rejecting the fresh bedding down low, and if they were kind of staying only in the familiar material that they came over with, then I'd be a little bit worried. But I think we're okay as far as like adoption of the material that the system was made up of. We can just blend in stuff if we wish. So I don't really have plans to add bedding today. Usually in brand new systems I do expect to find a whole lot of existing bedding, and that's kind of the case here too, although there's, I guess, proportionally to the stuff that I bought in along with the worms, a lot of this pretty heavily broken down material. It's probably mainly castings. I don't know. I haven't really taken a close look at it. A lot of it just came along with the worms because it was too clumpy to break up into small size particle matter that would pass through the screen. So that was the criteria for just keeping it with the worms, and hopefully at some point in the future it'll be more accessible. But I didn't want to take up a whole lot of time. And speaking of taking up a whole lot of time, I think we should probably be consistent, at least to give all the material a little infusion of the stuff on the top surface, blend it in with the fresh bedding below it, and don't try to treat it like there's separate material that needs to be handled differently. It's all their bedding, you know. So the only thing that's been kind of plaguing my thinking is the moisture content. It feels okay, you know, so I'm questioning whether I should even concern myself about it. So why don't we give them this feeding zone indicator as supplemental bedding. At least they'll get something better than nothing, right? And it looks like about one handful of potato peels. That's about what we left behind here, and there's a little bit of citrus too. This guy can get some of both. I think there's not enough lime to go around to both places, so the other system will get what's right here. So we've gone so far as to actually feed over here in bin number 1. We've not even peeked into bin number 2, but I think, you know, when you're running systems like these, things are sort of expected to be somewhat consistent. The one thing I don't think we noticed quite as prominently over in bin number 1 was the leftover pumpkin. Maybe there's a whole bunch of it and we just didn't really excavate that one particular section. That really kind of makes me wonder. I do feel like we should just take a little better probe. There's a little bit of it right there, and a whole lot of worms right there around what appears to be another chunk of this stuff. So perhaps I just didn't really excavate the exact spot where the majority of the food left for them last time is. I just kind of went for the middle, and there was a kind of a gap in there. So right on both edges of the feeding zone, there's a good number of worms still polishing off that leftover pumpkin, I believe is what I'm seeing there. So these guys, I guess, should get it back too, just the same. Here, jeez. So much familiar material that came along for the ride. Huh. The pumpkin has a little bit of a scent. It's a little bit more food than I would expect to find usually after so much time has passed. So I don't think it's going to lead to any sort of trouble, so I'm not worried about it. I'm just making note of it since you wouldn't be able to tell if something was stinky, because in most cases when you're doing work like this in your worm bins, the scent that you're expecting to encounter is kind of just like the forest floor, you know, just nature basically. There's no scent of the bedding, there's no scent of the foods they've been getting, there's no scent of the worms. It's just a very pleasant, I guess, kind of odor that you're kind of working in when you're working on your worm bins. So good many worms. So I am curious to see if our averages are going to sway to being more even, because I do believe that this system here, the second one, bin number 2, or was it bin number 1? I'm trying to remember now. Like, just from watching this, if you haven't seen the launch video, would you have a bias towards which system has the greater number of worms living in it? I don't know. If you want to go see the video where we do talk about it specifically, or I mean, you know, where these worms are introduced to their new homes, it's in that video. We try to show them a little bit better and also give the viewers a chance to comment and kick in their estimates for letting me know how many worms they think occupy my systems, and then that's how we come up with our worm count averages. using everyone's estimates, which I think is fun. So I think we're kind of at the conclusion of giving these little guys their feeding, aerating and blending in all of the familiar material that accompanied the worms when they came into these new systems, with all that nice fresh bedding that was down low that the systems were pre-built with. And you know, as usual, if it's not right there in front of my nose, I'm going to forget to add it. So we'll sprinkle in a little bit of the yummy worm chow for them. A lot of times I'll just include it down in the feeding. Now it's kind of getting introduced up above. And then here too, the stuff I'm sprinkling in afterwards is just a little bit of grit in case they need it. Pulverized eggshell. So just looking around, see if there's anything else I should be including. Maybe these guys will get this little tiny bit of grit. I mean, not grit, a little bit of supplemental bedding. Because it was just some stuff I spilled a little shredded paper. And I needed to pick it up, so I figured I would just use it as a little bedding supplement somewhere in one of my worm bin feedings, and this was my chance to get rid of this stuff. So I'm bringing in a couple coffee filters to help us see where we last fed. These are going to become our feeding zone indicators, and back on can come our top coverings. I do believe in these newer systems, keeping plastic coverings on is very important because of the, I guess, just the nature of the bedding material. You know, all that paper, it doesn't have a very good ability to hang on to its moisture content, the same way nice mature castings do. So new systems like these, I definitely feel best protecting them from drying. In all my other systems, though, it does seem like removal of plastic coverings has been the trend lately, trying to give systems an opportunity to kick off moisture. Here, we're doing our best to help the systems hang on to their existing moisture. So that's it for our check-in with my newest 12-day-old systems, actually getting feeding number 2 now. And it does look like they were enjoying that pumpkin they got for feeding number 1. A little bit of leftovers, doesn't matter. We gave them a feeding anyway. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.